Thanks again for your practice. Session is such an extraordinary time. There's so few people who do this kind of thing to really take that step inward, take the time to really explore who we are. And it's difficult, very difficult. So I'm so thankful to everyone, including Chanel and Bruno, the dogs, who are getting quite into it this session. They're sitting with us almost every sitting, or they're sleeping anyway. So I wanted to start before getting back into Dogen, talking a little bit about this pain work that I've been doing. I don't know if it will help you or not. My first teacher, Maizumi Roshi, towards the end of his life, was very concerned about people being discouraged from practice because of physical pain. He felt like that was maybe the main reason why people were hesitant to do sesshin. So he taught Qigong, which some people think is kind of funny that Maizumi Roshi, great Zen master, spent so much time teaching Qigong, and he really didn't know a whole lot about it. He, got advice from people, and Qigong does help with pain. I don't know if you know, if you've ever done any, but just using the energy. One of the practice, I also do not know that much about Qigong, so some of you may, but one of the practices is to have energy come in through your crown, the top of your head, and just go through your whole body. And then notice where the energy's stuck, and imagine like a hose. Imagine it's a hose that opens up and the energy flows. And then it goes out through, if you're sitting, through your center. If you're on the floor, if you're cross-legged, through your center, or through your foot bottoms. If you're in a chair, it goes into the ground. And then you can just breathe that way, and then be aware of the energy moving through the parts that hurt, and that kind of hose opening it up. Anyway, I did that. It didn't help that much. But I was reading Washington Post, and there was this article about pain from injury as being a brain function, that the brain decides that place hurts because of an injury, and we continue to feel it because of the patterning. So there's breaking the brain's patterning. I'm not so good at talking about this, but I read that and I went, that's me. Because the pain I have, I struggle with in Zazen, is in the same place as Aikido injuries. And I always thought, yeah, that's my injury. That's why it hurts. But apparently tendons heal after 40 years, that they don't hurt after 40 years. Who knew? And that pain is like a memory or something. So I just wanted to tell you some of the things that I am getting from, now I'm working with a therapist. I read it in Washington Post, and I immediately looked for a therapist to work on this, because pain and Zazen has been a struggle for me my whole practice. One thing that she gave me as an exercise which is different from the way we usually approach pain, or that I've taught to approach pain, which is to be it. Just like emotions, for sure, don't push away emotions. Like we do kind of work on the thoughts, letting go of the thoughts and the thinking. It's hard to let go of the thinking. So sometimes we just notice, just mindfully notice, I'm worrying, I'm thinking about the future, I'm going over the past, but we can kind of work on let go of that, go back to the breath, let go of that. But the emotions, pushing them down, they surface somewhere, then they surface somewhere else. So the practice I usually teach, and it's in alignment with Pema Chodron's work, and many Zen teachers these days, is be the emotion. Allow yourself to be angry. Work on letting go of the story. So-and-so made me angry. Let go of that story, because as soon as we calm down a little bit, if we remember the story, we get angry again. So let go of the story. Just be the anger or the yearning or the grief. And I also taught be the pain. That's how to work with the pain, be the pain. But her exercise and their advice is more disconnect a little bit from the pain, step back a little bit from it. And I think this fits with Uji. Well, the nice thing about Uji is it includes everything. So whatever I say fits with Uji, but it's all one. And there's distinct aspects to our life. So the exercise that I found really helpful is to look at the pain like looking at fish in an aquarium. There's the fish swimming around, and there's the aquarium wall, and then there's me looking at the pain. And I found that very helpful. And then ask, what is the pain saying to me? And things come up. What is the pain saying? I'm not okay. I'm not doing okay. Or you're doing fine. Just have that curiosity. Like in Zenju talks about the curiosity about the darkness, the curiosity about the pain space. And then watching things to watch. One thing she said that they're looking at is pain, but the main thing is that this pain that I think is an Aikido injury from 40 years ago can't be. It's my mind. It's emotional. And so that's kind of the underlying theory in this kind of way of looking at pain. And some pain, is maybe clearly right now injury. I don't know, but they have a lot of information about back pain that backs this up, so to speak. So seeing it that way is this is an emotional issue rather than an injury issue. Then one thing she said is pain is a distraction from fear. And I've been looking at that. I've been looking at, like, I'll be anger, I'll be yearning, I'll be any of that, but I don't allow myself to be fear. I think because I've always been a risk taker, and it's just easier to be a risk taker if you're not afraid. So I think I have really pushed down fear. And I even wonder if, like, I have panic attacks, if that's just the fear trying to get out. Because after a panic attack, I'll feel great. I feel great. Anyway, I don't know. But one thing to look at in terms of the pain, maybe what is the fear? And she says fear is not feeling safe, pressure, and worry. So see if maybe you're not feeling safe right now when the pain comes up. And of course, sessing is a place that many of us may not feel safe because we're going into this no self stuff, into this dropping off body and mind. It's quite scary, actually, to think about. In fact, it's freedom from fear to let go of all the reasons we have for fear. But maybe just check that out in terms of your pain. If maybe you're not feeling safe right now. And then she also talks about exasperating pain, which I think I've done in seisen, is like really trying to make it go away and making it worse. I think I made it worse. So check that out. I am no longer, and we were taught, and we inherited it, that you should just sit through the pain, just be it and sit through the pain. That's part of being a good Zen practitioner. And that can really aggravate it, I think, because we're tense, we don't feel safe, it hurts, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And if you do have a samadhi experience, then it feels good. So it's kind of like, I'm just trying to have a samadhi experience, not to feel the pain, rather than really working on sitting without pain. So I'm no longer a believer in sitting with pain, to whatever degree you want to. A certain amount, if you want to work with it, if you want to work on releasing it. But if it's excruciating, please sit in a chair, lie on the floor. I think it's much better to work with pain when it's not excruciating. And I think it aggravates it. Because if the pain's excruciating, there's fear and there's tension, which the tension aggravates the pain. And so just, in a more relaxed, cozier kind of way where the pain's not so intense, what is the emotion? Is there an emotion? Like low self-esteem, not feeling safe, pressure, worry. Is there a trigger? And do we catastrophize pain, which means, well, I do. Oh my God, I'm going to have a hip replacement, and I don't want a hip replacement. It just escalates rather than releasing. Okay, so that's the pain information I have. I don't know if it's helpful or not, because I'm sure that some pain is just completely physically based. But if you're thinking of the pain in terms of an injury, some of this information may help. I hope so. Do let me know if it helps. Then I'll talk about the next Dogen part. This is the fourth part of Uji. Know that in this way, there are myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth. And yet each grass and each form itself is the entire earth. The study of this is the beginning of practice. When you are at this place, there is just one grass. There is just one form. There is understanding of form and no understanding of form. There is understanding of grass and no understanding of grass. Since there is nothing but this moment, the time being is all the time there is. Grass being, form being are both time. Each moment is all being, is the entire world. reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. I'll talk about that last line first because it reminds me of Bernie. Reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. There was a while long ago, and I think Bernie was also working with an organization that had as its kind of motto isn't the right word, but you know, the little line under their title was who is left out. And their practice was, who are we leaving out in our organization? We're leaving out the ex-cons, leaving out handicap, leaving out women, leaving out certain genders. Who are we leaving out? So it interests me because this Dogen sounds just like this kind of modern way that we talk about reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. What are you leaving out of your present moment? What's not okay in your life? Mistakes, sadness, anger, what isn't allowed in your life? Can look at that. So then looking at what Shinsu Roberts says, and some of this is Dogen too. Oh, we talked about, not she, Dogen, talked about doubt. And there was just one quote, I'm not sure if I said this or not when we were talking about doubt. Truly productive doubt must bring us to a point in which we drop our intellect and enter the realm of actualization. So when we talk about great doubt, in terms of the faith, doubt, determination, which is the three pillars of Zen, it's not an intellectual doubt. Well, if that's true, then how come this? Or like a philosophical discussion about doubt. It's this doubt in your gut. What is it? What is my life? Why don't I see it? If Buddha and all the ancestors saw it, if my friends see it, why don't I see it? So this practice is not about pretending like you get it. It's not about memorizing stuff and putting it on the test and getting an A. You can do that. You can pretend like you get it. It's just that if you don't, it's not worth much. This is really telling the truth. And if the truth is, I don't quite see this, then be honest with ourselves and have that great doubt. So what is it? Why? Dogen's clarity, how did he manage that? Why, if it's everywhere, if it's as easy as Dogen says, why don't I see it? And so he says that great doubt brings us to the point where we drop our intellect and enter the realm of actualization. Then looking at this, this part of the Uji, know that in this way there are myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth. And yet each grass and each form itself is the entire earth. And she quotes Genjo Koan, this way is the self setting itself in array as the whole world being time, which Dogen had talked about previously. We set ourselves in array in connection with the whole world. So this way, which is the myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses, is the self, setting itself in an array as the whole world being time. Dogen perhaps most clearly states this in Genjo Koan, and some of you are very familiar with this. To forget the self is to be experienced by the myriad dharmas. To be experienced by the myriad dharmas is to let our own body and mind and the body and mind of the external world drop away. I think enlightened is the translation we usually use to experience. That's maybe nice. To forget the self is to be experienced by the myriad dharma, to be seen by all the dharmas, to be all the dharmas. So this was where, when he was talking before about the array, is don't be the universe, let the universe be me. Same thing. To be experienced by the myriad dharmas is to let our body and mind and the body and mind of the external world drop away. This dropping away is enacting our and all beings' true state of impermanence, interbeing, and cooperation. We do not lose our self-identity. Rather, we drop clinging to a particular self-identity and take our true place as and with all beings. This is dropping body-mind. So, dropping mind, we do not lose our self-identity. We drop clinging to a particular self-identity. This is Shinsho now talking. So isn't that the truth? That the reason we suffer is I am smart, and then we get a B, and all of a sudden we're not that anymore, and we suffer. Or I am so-and-so's daughter, and we lose our parents, and we're no longer a daughter. Whatever our self-identity is, I am a nice person, and then we do something mean. So we have a self-identity, but it's constantly changing every moment. And we have trouble with that because we cling to some kind of thing we created about who I am. Smart, dumb, good at building fires, whatever it is, rather than just letting ourselves be in the moment as manifested as the whole universe. See? Dropping body, mind enacts our kinship with all beings. This is setting the self in array. And remember, I said yesterday that one of the things Dr. Ward was really emphasizing, and he's talking about the huge change that's coming and how we're going to manage the mostly the environmental crisis. But he says, I'll just remember it, that one of the things we need to work on is our kinship with each other, our intimate relationships. We're not good at intimate relationships. We play games with each other. We fight with each other. We make ourselves better. We make ourselves worse. We can't talk to each other about how we're really feeling and what's really happening. Maybe if I started noticing in movies about relationships, like when whoever it is that's had a fight finally decides to make up, there's always a bottle of wine involved. Somehow without a bottle of wine, we're not able to speak truly to each other. So developing that kinship, which is the truth. There is no separation. We are each other. And developing, I mean, that's one of the benefits of ritual. That ritual is a place that highlights our kinship and our intimacy. And it's a place where we can experience that. I went to Day of the Dead with two friends on the 2nd. And I know two people now who are buried in this little cemetery, but we also bring a whole bunch of the marigolds and decorate the graves that no one has decorated. And, and there's mariachi bands, there's music, there's a wonderful feeling, and all the ancestors are there. You can feel all these ancestors there. And we just walked around and put marigolds on the graves and listen to the music, and it felt so intimate with them. I felt so close with them, and I think the ritual and the just was really helpful for that. So anyway, this is something I'm working on. True intimacy with each other. Dropping body mind. So this is Shinshu says, this is one of the advantages of Zen practice, is when we drop our body mind together, it enacts our kinship with all beings. This is setting the self in array. We are myriad phenomena, and we are the entire earth. This is not an abstraction. It is the basis for the Bodhisattva's altruistic path. It's not an abstraction, it's not a metaphor, it's our life. Katagiri Roshi said, in the human world, we see things as separate from us. In Buddha's world, all things come together and melt into one. So very naturally, if we set ourselves out in array in Buddha's world, we can see all other beings. Then we know we must live with others in peace and harmony because we are intimately related with no gap between. This is Buddha's world. And if you don't identify with being a Buddhist, you don't have to say Buddha's world. You can say Spirit's world, God's world, whatever word you want to say for Buddha. This is the fundamental reason for our practice. This is the enactment of the Bodhisattva's vow. The Bodhisattva strives to enact this understanding as response. The Bodhisattva strives to enact this understanding as response and knows it is not enough to just understand with our mind. Intellectual understanding is important, but we must go beyond thinking about reality to enacting reality. This is enlightened response. This enlightened response is the being time or present moment of setting the self out in array. So this is also what Bernie really emphasized. What is enlightenment to Bernie? Enlightenment is how you manifest in the world. So you may have had the biggest, most fantastic experiences of anybody. You may be able to write like Dogen Zenji about the nature of oneness, but what is your life like? How is your life doing in terms of love and harmony? And that's a question I ask myself all the time. How am I manifesting with love and harmony? And oftentimes not very well. The enlightened response is the being time or present moment of setting the self out in array. Okay, so then that was just the first line. Know that in this way there are myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth, and yet each grass and each form itself is the entire earth. The study of this is the beginning of practice. When you are at this place, there is just one grass. There is just one form. Okay, so he says, the study of this is the beginning of practice. So sometimes we think dropping off body and mind, that's the end, right? Then I'm done, yay. Get a medal, I'm enlightened. Dogen says that's the very first step in practice. She says, our Buddhist practice is learning, and again, where it says Buddhist, put whatever, spiritual practice, is learning that the coming and going of our life is life itself, is the place and time of practice realization expressed. Every coming and going. Right before this talk, Bruno threw up twice. Bruno's my dog, threw up twice. Perfect expression of enlightenment. Poor baby. I don't know how he was eating grass. I'm like with him all the time, and he threw up all this grass. I did not see him eating it. Anyway, coming and going, dog throwing up. This is the place and time of practice realization expressed. And remember, practice realization, that came earlier. The practice realization is Dogen's, what he loves to say, that your practice is realization. There's no separation. Of course not, because there's no separation with anything. So right now, sitting with terrible pain, mind super busy, having lots of dark thoughts, being in fear, being in chaos, that is realization. Every moment of our life is realization, is what he's saying. Life expressed happens at this time. And for this reason, it should not be understood as a linear progression. So the most enlightened person can fall into deep chaos and doubt and work through that as practice. And someone can just step in off the street and see the Buddha on the altar or something and have a tremendous experience. It's not linear because it's all here. Which part decides to poke up, we don't know. Furthermore, from the standpoint of non-duality, mutual identity and interpenetration, there is no beginning, middle, or end. The activity of practice becomes present practice as realization, not practice for a future realization. So this is it. However you're doing right now, this is it. This is the very best practice. It's not for in the future. Dogen writes, the way of the Buddha is the way of the Buddha at the time of the first production of the thought of awakening. The first thought, beginner's mind. Marie's here doing her first session. That's the first thought, beginner's mind. The way of the Buddha is the way at the time of the first production of the thought. It is the way of the Buddha at the time of attaining true enlightenment. It is the way of the Buddha throughout the beginning, middle, and end. Therefore, our effort in practice must be directed to each moment of the 24 hours of the glorious radiance of our day. That last sentence was Shinshu. Someone who has come to know a single particle knows the whole universe. And someone who has penetrated one real Dharma has penetrated the myriad Dharmas. Someone who has not penetrated the myriad Dharmas has not penetrated one real Dharma. When students of penetration penetrate to the end, they see the myriad Dharmas and they see single real Dharmas. Therefore, people who are learning of a single particle are inevitably learning of the whole universe. That was Dogen. And here is Shinshu. To understand the truth of mutual identity and mutual interpretation is not an abstract philosophical idea. It is the Dharma gate of compassion and wisdom. Dogen says, in the activity of our living and dying, coming and going, we should understand that nothing can be grasped, only lived. So that goes with this awakening is in this moment. Next moment could be chaos and despair. It's just this moment. And we should understand that it cannot be grasped, only lived. He asks, if someone says, what is the state of past mind cannot be grasped, we should say living and dying, coming and going. What is the state of present mind cannot be grasped? We should say living and dying, coming and going. What is the state of future mind cannot be grasped? We should say living and dying, coming and going. In sum, there is Buddha mind as fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles, and all the Buddhas of the 3 times experience this as it cannot be grasped. There are only fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles, which are the Buddha mind itself, and the Buddha experience is it cannot be grasped. It cannot be grasped. And I'm hearing Chola say, and that can't be grasped. It cannot be grasped, and that cannot be grasped. It's ungraspable. And what Dogen is saying, it's only lived. It's about your life, which is fundamental. The interesting thing, one of the interesting things about Dogen is the very last writings are just ritual. They're how to get up, what to do when you get up, what the prayer to do, how to take a bath, how to go to the bathroom. They're just ritualizing of life. This is how to live your life. And I put that to Bernie's teachings, which was always, how are you living your life? How are you manifesting your life? That's your enlightenment. And I think I already said, he would say, we would ask him, who is the most enlightened person? And he always chose people who live impeccable lives. Now we lost Louise, and somehow after losing him, the perfection of his life, his kindness, his, like Kokio said, I can't remember, we knew him 20 years. And I knew him longer than that, I guess, because I sat with him my first session. I guess Luis was there, of course. But in all that time, the Zen centers had so much stuff, so many hard times, so much people mad at each other, myself included, so much disharmony, dysfunctional. And I'm sure there'll be more to come. And Luis was never part of any of that. For 20 years. And then when people started talking, they started talking about how Oh yeah, one time I was really sad and Louise came up and asked me what was going on and gave me a little pep talk. One time Louise just sang a song to me about how I was a good person, like I was a little kid, like a little lullaby kind of thing when I was really struggling with something. So here's an example, and I think sometimes Louise felt like, oh, all of these people are being shoe sewn, getting this, and I'm just nothing. But how he manifested his life, and for all of us, not to say that to shame any, not to shame myself, not to shame anyone, but as a aspiration, the aspiration for awakening should be um, to refine my life, to live my life with love and in intimate relationship with everything, with the people, the plants, the animals, the rocks, the factories, to live with intimacy with each other. So this is the really deep part of sessing, and I just encourage you to stay with it as you do. Don't force yourself. Now is really a good time to kind of let go and just be here. Just be here. Um, and experience this wonderful life. So we'll just keep on going.